most frequent debates is what's best to do. You know,
this is the red worm about which everyone been talking last year.
Yeah. So you've got two different types of blood-sucking worms. You've got large strong owls, and then you've got small strong owls.
So when this worm inside of the pony, which areas, what organs they live inside? Is it digestive tract or liver, heart, lungs?
So these are all the most common parasites that you'll find in horses reside in the gastrointestinal tract. Now they might live in different regions of the gastrointestinal tract. So the ones that I'm picking out here live predominantly in the large intestine.
Right.
And these are both large strong owls and small strong owls are both classed as bloodsuckers. So they, in very colloquial terms, so they attach to the lining of the large intestine and literally suck blood. Now the really interesting thing about these small strong owls is that they spend part of their life cycle like buried inside the intestinal lining.
Wow.
And then when it comes to spring and it starts warming up, they can emerge like en masse from the lining of the intestine. And one of the issues with that is that if you've got a large enough burden, then that can cause huge amounts of tissue damage in the large intestine.
Right. What is impact on the ponies when they have those worms? What does happen to them?
That's my work. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
And they are common in the wild ponies, or it was introduced by I don't know, some domestic way?
No, quite common across wild populations. Because small. Because one of the really interesting things is that with domestics we try and remove all. So the common thing with domestic horses, domestic ponies, is to try and remove all worms.
Yeah.
And that's kind of small. And that's kind of vet guidance, is to remove all parasites.
But would it not reduce the resistance of the animal?
So I think one of the most, and I think these ponies have been surviving for so long with no drugs, with
no treatments,
with no drugs, no worming treatments. I think if you tried to worm them, you'd end up introducing even more issues.
So removing these worms, we sort of in a way reduce their immunity to them.
Yeah, and I think because we're well aware that we don't get all the ponies down. Every single gathering, there's still going to be plenty of ponies up there. I think if you wormed the ones that did come down, then the next year you might not get the same ponies down, and you'd be then just reintroducing ponies back into the environment who have been wormed, but on a landscape where there are still worms in the environment. So it's not going to stop them from getting reinfected, but potentially is then just going to introduce wormer resistance, and then you've got a whole host of other problems. I mean, I think one of the really important things with these ponies is, like, I'm sure you've been around and videoed them. Like, they've come down. Most of them look fat.
Yeah.
They look good. They look healthy, and they're capable of breeding. So
they have milk to raise their young.
Exactly. So it's not that they're coming down and they're looking particularly awful.
No, not at all. They look beautiful. They're absolutely stunning.
So it's a really interesting one, considering they get managed very, very differently to what we would do with domestics.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm wondering if they are in the mountains, and in the mountains we don't have monoculture of grass. We have different grasses which are medicinal in a way, including the same heather, or we pick up bilberries, and it is all antiseptic and anti-inflammatory. Do pony nibble on this kind of grasses?
Yeah. So some of the work a master's student did in our lab last year looked at what the ponies were eating, and we actually found not only are they just eating grass, but they're also eating a massive range of different things. So they will eat bilberry, they will eat gorse, they'll even eat things like rushes, which surprised me. Although now that I've seen that, now I have actually noticed them nibbling on some rushes. So I think really important for the, I mean, obviously, we appreciate that they are really important for the diversity of the ecosystem, but are obviously really important for the landscape as well, because they're not just selectively eating. They aren't just selectively eating grass, they are actually nibbling on a whole host of different things, different plants that are in the environment. Now, whether or not that has a beneficial effect on their overall health, I'm not too sure. Or whether or not they just kind of munch on things because they're there. But it's certainly very interesting, considering that they do have free choice access to nibble on so many different things, when perhaps the grass quantity is a little bit low.
So that's very interesting. What you do? You're putting them in the water to just clean the muck out.
Water to clean all the poo off.
And the solution is? And
then they are then going into like a special culture media, which has got antibiotics and an antibacterial agent in to try and stop any bacterial growth.
Right.
And then what they're going to do is they're going to then go back into the flask, and then I'm going to attempt to culture them, and then use the worms to identify antibody responses. So like how ponies, so with some of the collected fecal samples that I've got, how does the gut immune system, how does it respond to parasite loads? Because I think that feeds into one of the earlier things you were saying. It's really interesting because, well, actually, how do they cope with these worm burdens? Because they've got high worm burdens. We know they've got high worm burdens, but actually, how does that impact the ponies?
Right.
That's one of the really
people use herbs for centuries to treat different infections, as an antiseptic including, and as a wormer in livestock. So I wonder if it does do the same thing for the ponies.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole new area of research called zoopharmacognosy, which is looking at different animal species, how they selectively eat different things, based on the health impacts. And I don't think there's been an awful lot of research into whether or not horses will selectively eat things. But certainly there is some general thought processes that most animals will selectively eat.
So when you look at these feces, the samples of these feces, is there anything else apart from these specific worms you're looking at? Is there any other worms? Or anything else crawling in?
No, not really. The group that came, the lot that came down last week, had an awful lot of large strongyles in, so another type of blood-sucking worm. In the young ponies, you tend to find that they have roundworm burdens as well that normally clear by the time they hit sort of 4 or 5 years old. So it's affected by age, the types of intestinal parasites that they'll have. But also aging should give them some level of immunity to
resist. How old are the ponies in the mountains? What is the oldest of these ponies?
Oh gosh, I think based on some of our records, so my supervisor has been working with the ponies for about the last 15 years. So we've got a database that spans 15 years of pony monitoring.
15 years.
15 years.
Wow.
So I think some of them are potentially 18, 19, 20 upwards.
And there is no any predators which can nothing.
No predators out there. So I mean, they live a pretty cushy lifestyle, don't they?
Well, they've got their mountain, they've got the farmers looking after them.
Yeah, they've
got scientists investigating what to do to help them. So
a ton of science, and I think that's the really important thing with these ponies is like they're important from a social perspective, from a historic perspective, from a community perspective, from a scientific perspective. Like they have an awful lot of worth. And And I think if we ever lost them.
What, wrong one went into wrong?
No, I got a big huge glob of poo in there.
Oh,
Which needs to come out.
right.
I should really have gloves on for this as well.
Would you like a glove? I've got a pair.
Um,
It's not just comfortable working in a glove, you can't feel a thing.
you think, oh, okay, you should really
As long as you don't swallow it, it's fine.
it's completely fine. Yeah, I mean, I love them. I absolutely love them. I love working with them.
How do you find it with hill farmers that they have their stock of sheep which been, let's say, warmed before they are back in the mountain? Is there any kind of I don't know, inconvenience through having sheep on the mountain, or do sheep help to maintain the bed, like in terms of the grasses?
I mean, I think one of the kind of age-old things was always that you should co-graze horses with other species, so like sheep, because you haven't really got much parasite transference from sheep to horses.
So they do not transfer parasites between each other.
That was what was always thought.
Do you want the large strong barrel one in there as well?
Yeah, just put them back in. Just remember which ones they are. But actually,
Do you want me to label?
I think some of the more recent work coming out is that actually you do get parasite transference.
Right.
How much of an issue it is, I'm not too sure, because there isn't a lot of research out there.
Would you say that the same bread worms are in sheep, found on sheep?
You do get similar types of parasites. However, to be honest with you, I don't even know enough about sheep to be able to say.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you have exactly the same species, so I'm not saying that I don't think that you'd get complete transference. That you'd get an awful lot of transference from sheep to horses,
Okay.
and vice versa.
What about domestic, that we have people riding domestic horses on the mountain? What would you say, are they an issue or they are beneficial?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know how many people ride across there. I think probably fine, unless you've got horses riding across there who've already got wormer resistance, and you're potentially then
So it is up to owners of the domestic horses to ensure that their horse is clean.
To make sure that they're wormed appropriately and correctly.
And stable them for the period after worms coming out, so it's not introduced to the
so
wild
they're
ones.
not going and then pooing.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you very much.
Need to go and